Hello, Dr. Salla. Welcome to the Galactic Encounters in France, Valence, July 2024. We are on 9th of July, and you allow us an interview. Dr. Salla, thank you for coming to France for this event. How do you feel? How would you tell us about your experience for these past 3 days?
What I have seen is that French people are very interested in this phenomenon and understanding the exopolitical implications, that they are wanting to get as much data as possible so that they can make good informed choices about the future, because I think the French people understand the global and the wider implications of all of these issues concerning extraterrestrial life and secret space programs, that we need as much information as possible. And I think the French people are intellectually and culturally equipped to be able to gather this information and to express it and distill it to the French-speaking world and to any others that are interested.
Great tribute to the French-speaking people, to the French people here. I was thinking, Dr. Salla, it is the second event of Galactic Encounters. Do you believe that such events should take place in other countries in Europe, for instance?
I believe that these kinds of events where you have scientists and contactees coming together is crucial, because when you just have scientists coming together, looking at the scientific data and speculating about that, you only get a little bit of the picture. When contactees come and they talk about their experiences, their knowledge, what they have learned, this is information from a first-hand experience concerning life in our in the galaxy and secret space programs. And this is information that often is dismissed by the scientific community, and so you have two separate endeavors. And this conference is very important because it brings both together, and so we can have the scientific and the first-hand experiential coming together to give us a broad perspective of what's happening.
Thank you, Dr. Salla. Precisely, specifically on scientists, we have here the organizer, which is Chris Esson. You know him, you know his work, his contribution. Dan Willis will give online an interview, a speech tomorrow. What can you say about both persons, Chris Esson, Dan Willis?
Well, Chris Esson is very significant because he is presenting a perspective of science which is rooted in the theories of Nikola Tesla. And these theories are undervalued in Western science today. So he is reassessing a lot of contemporary science from the perspective of the ether, and that
the ether?
The ether, that the ether is something that modern science dismisses, but that Nikola Tesla said that this was essential to developing an accurate understanding of how to utilize science for improving human life. Whereas Einsteinian physics, which has been adopted, excludes any consideration of the ether. So I think he's doing very important work in presenting Tesla, presenting the perspective of a science which is grounded in an understanding of the ether. For Dan Willis, his presentation and his information is important because he has worked with some very prominent scientists such as Dr. Marcel Vogel, who understood the qualities and the potentials of crystals and their potential for healing and many other applications. And with Dan Willis, he's been working with Elena Danan, who has been communicating with Jenhan Eredyan, who is the brother of Thorhan Eredyan, her primary contact, and he is a planetary scientist with the Galactic Federation of Worlds. So he is passing on his information about crystals, their applications, their potential to Dan Willis, who is comparing that to what Marcel Vogel had to say. So we're getting and Dan Willis is collaborating with Chris Esson to build some device, a free energy generator based on these understandings of the ether, crystal technologies. And so this is, I think, a very important step forward for presenting a new science.
Yeah, Doctor, do you think, which are the prospects on the scientific side? Do you believe other American scientists or European scientists will gather to study, to follow Chris Esson's work on a new physics based on ether, the fifth element, on Dan Willis' interpretation of Heredion's disclosure, and what can we expect in the next future on this scientific level?
I think a lot of the scientific theories that Chris Esson, Dan Willis are presenting is going to be very much open source information, because much of the scientific breakthroughs over the last 50, 60 years have been incorporated into classified programs and top secret. And companies, the top aerospace companies in the United States and around the world, like Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, Boeing, General Dynamics, they have appropriated these technologies and the patents. And many patents have been kept secret in the United States. Over 6,000 patents dealing
6,000.
with... That's correct, yes. There are over 6,000 patents that have been withheld under national security orders because they are presenting new understandings of modern physics from these kinds of perspectives. So what Dan Willis and Chris Esson are doing is part of a new wave of developing and presenting this information in the open source literature. And I think this is the way to overcome the deep state and those that want to keep this knowledge restricted to only a few corporations and to monopolize this knowledge. So I think the new physics is going to become very, very important. More and more scientists will understand that this is really the future. And the companies like especially SpaceX with Elon Musk, they also are advocating this open source science because they understand that the older legacy companies have a monopoly on this information that they've claimed as proprietary. So Elon Musk is really pushing open source. And I think this is the way we need to go. And this is how the new science and all of these theories, I think, will be released to the world through the open source literature. And there'll be many scientists, very prominent scientists, that will support this because they can collaborate open source one another. There's no restriction, there's no classification. You don't have to sign non-disclosure agreements where you can be threatened if you tell the truth. Open source is very open, whereas if you work in classified programs, everything is secret. You sign non-disclosure agreements, and you can't talk about this.
Okay, yeah, Dr. Salla, thank you very much. This is a very positive point of view, introduction to the current event and the next future, the coming future. Scientists, so you said that there will be a radical change in the next future. That's what we can understand. Do you think it will come in the 2 next years, or how do you see the very coming future precisely?
I think it'll be very organic. It'll be like as more and more people understand, especially scientists, understand that this is real. And in the United States, there is a revolution happening right now, a scientific revolution, where for over 50 years scientists were told that UFOs was nonsense, this was conspiracy theory, anyone talking about this was crazy. But since 2017, when the New York Times and Politico published articles saying that UFOs was a serious issue, they use a different term, UAP, unidentified anomalous phenomenon, but it's the same thing. It's UFOs, and they're saying UFOs are important and that this is a serious national security issue, and scientists need to consider this. So this is a big revolution in the scientific community. Many scientists are now saying that, well, we need to look at this because this is important. The government is telling us. The Congress is looking at this issue. They are passing legislation. They are holding hearings on the UFOs, and so and many scientists are paying attention now.
Good.
And they're joining new organizations like the Galileo project out of Harvard University, the Sol Foundation out of Stanford University. So many scientists are paying attention, and so this means that now that they know UFOs are real, they're going to be more interested in theories like those offered by Chris Esson and others, looking at a new scientific framework for understanding the propulsion systems and the navigation systems of these craft. And also the scientists will be more open to people like Elena Denan, Jean-Charles Moyen, JP, who I've been working with, who are saying that they've been inside of the craft, that they see how the craft operates. Scientists will say, well, how do they operate? How does the mind interface with the technology?
Yeah.
Give me details, because the scientists are now trying to figure it out.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Dr. Salla. We're looking forward to such events. We're looking forward to events in America, in Europe, with more scientists from any country, maybe Chinese, maybe Russian, American, Italian, German, whatever countries, and maybe in France, maybe here in Valence next year with more scientists. It will be great if Dan Willis may come with other scientists. What about the Orlando event that is coming place? It will be a very important event as well in September. No, not in Orlando, in Denver.
Yes, in Westminster, which is a suburb of Denver, from September 27 to 29, will be the third Galactic Spiritual Informers Connection Conference. So this is a very important conference. It brings together a lot of contactees, a lot of researchers and scientists to present this big picture of how our modern day science can deal with extraterrestrial life, extraterrestrial technologies, and also to deal with the abductions of humans, of children especially, that have been used in some of the black programs, the exploitation of children, how this is very important. Tony Rodriguez, Melanie Charret, they will be talking at length about how the children have been abused in these programs, because this is a very important human rights issue. Many people think of UFOs as just a scientific issue or maybe a kind of national security issue, but there's also important human rights implications that people have been abused and used, and many missing people every year. A million people from the United States and other countries disappear every year, and people don't know where they're going, and many of these are children. So everything along those lines are discussed at the conference, as well as some new health paradigms, how we can understand health, holistic health, and what new science and extraterrestrials can help us with in developing a new health paradigm.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Salla. What about there are a fellowship group list of people enlisting, registering to medbed list in Europe and other countries. I know someone who is member of medbed list around Paris. We can register for the release, expecting the release of such technologies, such future patents, let's just say, or open patents, of course. So, what about the thrill, for instance? Do you think it will help to change the medical institutions, the medical system in the world?
Yes, the holographic healing technology is a very important development. I mean, that holograms can be used to restore organs, regenerate limbs, and even for prolonging life. That holographic technologies do exist. That the people that I've been interviewing for a number of years now, who have served in secret space programs, describe having used these medbeds to restore...
Emery Smith talked about it.
Correct, yes. Emery Smith. There have been a number of others, Randy Kramer, and a few others have talked about this kind of technology to regenerate limbs, regrow organs.
Tony Rodriguez, well.
Yeah. Yes, that's right. He also suffered limb loss during some of his missions. So these holographic healing technologies have been used in the secret space programs for decades now. But what we know, according to the information from Elena Danam, and also JP, who went to the moon and was part of these missions, was saying that there was a lot of equipment being transferred to the moon for building many medbeds for potential use on Earth for the population to help many sick people on the Earth. And that these technologies are being mass produced on the moon.
Presently.
Correct. That they are presently being produced on the moon, but they are not being released into the public realm yet because the deep state still has control of the planet. And if they were released to the planet, the deep state would do things to sabotage this or to take control. They cannot be trusted. So these medbeds are just waiting for the time when the deep state is no longer in control. So this is the problem we face at the moment, that the deep state still has a lot of control over religious institutions, financial institutions, political organizations.
Media.
Exactly. The media is still under the control of the deep state. So all of this has to be removed. And so there is a revolution happening now to expose the deep state. In the United States, we see this with the 2024 presidential elections, much more is being revealed now. Many more people now believe that there is a deep state that steals the elections, that controls votes, that controls the media, that uses the state for lawfare against political opponents. So more and more people are waking up to this.
Thank you. Because about the patents, you mentioned number 6,000 patents. We heard that Donald Trump said he would release Nikola Tesla patents, over 300 or 500 patents.
1,000, yes.
What do you say about it?
Yes, that was information I got from in 2017, that one of the first presidential memoranda released by Donald Trump in his first, just weeks after he came into power, was to declassify and release 1,000 of the patents that have been withheld under national security orders. So 1,000 out of the 6,000. And he said that had to be done in 1 year. That was what he put out in his memorandum. He commanded the bureaucracy of all of the intelligence community and the military to release any national security orders they had on patents, especially to do with advanced medical healing and also advanced propulsion systems. Now, what happened was that the military intelligence community ignored that. They did not follow that through, and instead what they did was they attacked the Trump administration, that they arranged for his national security advisor, General Michael Flynn, to be sacked, and that they sabotaged his agenda at every step. So this was never achieved. But that was very important, that from the beginning of his administration, that was his intent, because he is very knowledgeable about this, because his uncle, John Trump, or Professor John Trump, was actually worked at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. He was a full professor. He was a specialist in high voltage electrostatics, and he was the scientist that was asked to review the work of Nikola Tesla.
When he died.
Exactly. When Tesla died in 1943, it was Professor John Trump who was asked to review all of Tesla's files, inventions.
On microfilm.
Yeah. Exactly, to work out which ones should be released and which ones withheld under national security orders. So that's what he did, and Professor Trump told his son, told his nephew, Donald Trump, in the 1980s, we know this because this was published in papers, that Donald Trump in the 1980s was saying that his uncle, John Trump, was telling him incredible information about all of these advanced technologies that exist. So he was told all this in the 1980s. So
he was young
and at that time he was still a young businessman, but this was something he knew. And so when he ran for president in 2016, he was asked to run to kind of like help release these technologies. So in 2017, his first year in office, he tried to do that, but he was blocked by the CIA and the national and the intelligence community.
So, and do you believe the white hat military will act positively in the future? The good military, let's say, the military who want to support the disclosure on this, the technology and propulsion technology as well, healing technology.
Definitely, there are white hats within the U.S. Military and the intelligence community, and in the political system. There are many white hats. These are people that are pro-disclosure. They want the truth to come forward. They see the benefits in releasing all of this technology and all this information. They understand that this will be the benefit of the United States, and it will become a leading space power.
For the United States and for the world, of course.
And of course for the world. And this is what we're seeing with the Artemis Accords, that the United States...
With
the Artemis Accords.
Okay.
The Artemis Accords, these are bilateral agreements between NASA and the space agencies of 42 other countries.
Okay.
So France's space agency, CNES, I believe. That they have signed on to the Artemis Accords. So this is something that the White Hats are doing, that they want this information to come out, and that they are encouraging individuals to reveal what they know of this. So we know in the United States there are people like David Grush and others that have come forward. Michael Herrera is another one recently who came forward.
David Fravor,
and Ryan Graves. There also JP, who's still active in the active US Army. He's encouraged to reveal this. I mean, he's being told to share this information. And this is only because there are white hats that say, we will protect you, we will make sure nothing happens to you. And the black hats, the ones that are opposed to this, they have an agreement. You know, we don't attack your people, you don't attack our people. So there's agreement, there's a compromise. So you don't see David Grush or Ryan Graves or JP and Fravor being assassinated or threatened into silence. They're being told, you can talk this much, not this much. So there's a compromise. But the White Hats, they are doing this because they understand that this information needs to be released organically. You can't go too fast. If you go too fast, this will create chaos. If you go too slow, this will create resentment and frustration. So you have to release in an organic way that people can absorb. So this is why they're doing it this way, through whistleblowers, through contactees, because people that are ready for this information can say, wow, fantastic, now I understand the big picture. People who are not ready, they can say, oh, bullshit, this is conspiracy theory, I don't believe a word of it. And this is satisfactory for the white hats and the black hats.
Great. This is very positive, Dr. Salla. That's wonderful expectation. It's a fight, it's a fight because the deep state is a terrible thing and it's still in power, but we are positive that things will change for all nations on earth. So, Dr. Salla, about a recent update, you have a channel called A Week in Report, in which you give weekly news every week, of course. So, recent updates, can you say a word about the coming dismantlement of the ESS authorized by NASA, I think assigned to SpaceX, proposed to make a commercial station?
Correct, yes. The contract that was given to SpaceX to dismantle the International Space Station. So that's a story I covered in my Week in Review that it is released weekly on my YouTube
Recently.
channel. Correct. And so in that, I raised a number of concerns about what will happen if NASA ceases to be in charge of a space station. So NASA and the European Space Agency and the Japanese Space Agency, they're collaborating with the International Space Station. They run the projects, they allow live feeds to be released, and the benefit of having governments run international space stations is that in the United States and other countries you have Freedom of Information Act, and the public has a right to know. And also, and these space agencies have a commitment, at least, to public transparency. They say, okay, this is run by NASA. NASA is a publicly funded organization. So
although they don't disclose everything.
Exactly, yes. that they have an obligation to reveal what's going on, so they allow for live camera feeds. But what has happened is that in the past, when a live camera feed on the International Space Station shows a UFO, they cut the transmission. Yes. This is what they do, and of course they're also
at least we have access to the feed.
Exactly, the feed is there, and many researchers study the feed closely every day.
I've seen some,
and so this is a positive thing, because if you now have corporate-run space stations, the corporation is under no obligation to do a live feed. If they want to, they can. If they don't want to, they don't have to. They're under no obligation to do this.
Do you think, Dr. Salla, this is an action from the deep state?
It could be. It could be one of those things. It can go either way. Personally, I think it's important that we have government-run space agencies that are committed to transparency, that will reveal things that are happening in space, and that there's Freedom of Information Act, so that the public can demand records. But if you have a corporate-run space station that is an international initiative, the public can't demand corporations to reveal or to release documents. The public can't demand to have live camera feeds. You can say, well, you can pressure the corporations to do this, but they're under no obligation. So I think that it's a good thing to have government-funded space programs that are transparent, that are responsive to public interest. I think this is better than corporate-run space programs, because SpaceX, I think, is doing a lot of good things. I think Elon Musk is doing many good things, but I still think in the future we can never fully trust corporations, because corporations are always going to be motivated by making as much money as possible, whereas governments have a different motivation.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Salla. Especially when you think that all the classified programs regarding UFOs, regarding alternative propulsion systems, have been trusted to private companies, Lockheed Martin, McDonnell Douglas, and all these companies who took the secret research. So, okay. Yes, the news about the warp drive technology, so many other allegedly would have been found recently, discovered recently, while we know that this technology exists for several decades.
Yes, there has been breakthroughs in understanding some of the theories concerning warp drive propulsion systems. That there was a Mexican scientist, Miguel Alcubierre, who proposed this theory of warp drives in the 1990s, and some scientists were very interested in that, and they have developed it now to the point where the exotic matter that was originally a part of Alcubierre's theories concerning a warp drive, and now they believe that you can actually achieve warp drive without the need for exotic matter. And so many scientists are now attracted to this idea, and I think this is a part of this recent trend towards some of these theories and practical technologies that are being used in secret space programs coming out. That these warp drive technologies have been used in classified programs for many decades, going back, I mean, you can go back to the 1970s with the US Navy's Solar Warden program when that was developed, or you can even go back to the 1920s and 1930s with Maria Orsic and the real propulsion systems that she developed that it could even be dated back to then. But I think what we are seeing now is that more scientists are discussing warp drive technologies because this is a way for the white hats to release some of these anti-gravity propulsion systems that have been secretly released or secretly used for decades in secret space programs, and that they will be released in a way that will make it look like this is brand new technology that has just been developed, and that SpaceX, Blue Origin, and other new space companies are going to promote these and build these kind of exotic propulsion systems. But really, these technologies have been used for many decades. So I think this is a way for the white hats to move the disclosure process forward, because the legacy companies, the big companies, are controlled by the deep state.
Yeah, but anyway, we don't tell the truth, the entire truth. So the entire truth is that this technology exists for several decades. So the entire truth will come later.
That's exactly right, because if you told the entire truth now, people would not be focused on the new technologies and the practical applications. They would be more angry at the people that suppressed this technology for 40, 50 years, saying, well, if you released this technology 30, 40 years ago, my uncle wouldn't have died of cancer.
That would raise resentment, maybe conflict, maybe social disorder.
Exactly, yes. There would be a lot of social disruption if you did full disclosure. But if you did it this way, which is what I think is happening, that you release these technologies organically and make it look as though this is because there are new theories, new scientists developing this, then you can release them without any problem of the public saying, oh, you covered this up for 40, 50 years, you are monsters, you should go to jail, and this removes the kind of this social disruptive and legal elements from the equation.
Okay, that's positive. Sometimes the full disclosure will come, and it will be sad and bitter for many of us anyway. For so many things have been suppressed to the public attention for years, but for the time being, we'll be patient.
Yes, it makes sense that they would do it this way, because then the public will use these technologies for 10, 20 years, and maybe in 10 years, 20 years, they reveal that, they revealed the truth. But by then, the public is used to these technologies.
We'll be happy already.
They're already happy. They're already out there and say, well, this is history. And
we're waiting for the medbeds, of course. We're waiting for the release of medbeds on a world, on a global level.
Yes. First, they will release them, the medbeds, and say, this is new technology developed by these new companies. And then after 10, 20 years, they say, this was actually developed in the 1970s.
It'll be okay.
But public there won't be a revolution.
Okay, thank you for this, so important issues, Dr. Salla. Now, coming to something more galactic, let us say, the future NASA mission to Europa, one of Jupiter's moon.
Yes, this is a new mission that NASA has just implemented. It's called the Clipper mission, and it's going to...
Clipper mission, yes. Why is its name?
I'm not sure why they came up with that name. I can't remember. Clipper.
It's a reminder of
it might be a scientist.
It's not paperclip, no?
No, nothing to do with paperclip. I'm not sure why.
Frightening.
But they came up with that name for that mission, but it's going to launch very soon. And I believe it's going to be launched this year. And
with conventional propulsion.
Exactly. And so with conventional propulsion, it will take approximately 4 or 5 years to reach Jupiter. And that's conventional propulsion. And so once it reaches Jupiter, then it will start to do an orbit of the moons of Jupiter, beginning with Europa. And it will study Europa. And scientists are very excited that, we're going to have the Clipper mission, we're going to have data coming in about Europa, and we're going to be able to finally get an answer to whether or not there is life on Europa. Now, of course, for many mainstream scientists, this is exciting. But we know from whistleblowers and contactees that, in fact, there are already existing bases on Europa. That Europa in many ways is like Antarctica. That Antarctica, you have like 2 to 3 miles of ice sheet, and underneath that there are extensive river systems. Well, in Europa you have like a thick ice sheet, several miles of an ice sheet, and underneath that is a vast ocean. But in that ice sheet, and underneath the ice sheet between the ocean, the heat that is generated creates a environment that is suitable for bases. And so there are bases on Europa. There are cities on Europa under the ice sheet. And so
on land, on water, underwater,
under the ice sheets, there is facilities, or there is terrain where they have been able to build cities. Now, this suggests that underneath the ice sheets of Europa, there is both land and some surface where these bases are. But there are these bases, and JP described one of his missions where he was with Nordic extraterrestrials. They took him on a mission to Ganymede and then to Europa, and that they were dropping off supplies from the Earth for these colonies of extraterrestrial bases on Ganymede and Europa. And so he described the way the city looked. He described the underground facilities on both Ganymede and Europa. And the interesting thing here, of course, is that this answers the question to my mind: is there life on Europa? Is there life on Ganymede? Because he's not the only one to have talked about extraterrestrial bases on these moons of Jupiter. There have been others that have talked about this.
A question, thank you, Dr. Salla. A question to compare with what we were saying about alternative technology, medical or propulsion. Can we believe that this mission is to Europa is a stage as well for the power, the political sense and power, to reveal what is taking place in Europa, while we already know that?
I think this Clipper mission is really part of what the deep state wants to do. It is to keep the disclosure process suppressed, so you just reveal a little bit at a time. And so they want to delay to 2030 any announcement concerning extraterrestrial life. They want to delay disclosure. They want to just push things back, saying, well, we are sending missions to Europa. We are sending future missions to Mars.
They already found an ocean, but no more.
Yes, everything is incremental. It's like they send missions to Mars. NASA's been sending missions to Mars, not to find evidence of life on Mars today. They send missions to Mars to find evidence of ancient life on Mars. They're looking for evidence of fossil life. So in other words, if they have a camera there and a fossil rover and a rabbit hops across Mars, it's like, no, this is an anomaly. This is outside of our parameters. They're looking for fossils of rabbits on Mars. We're not interested in live rabbits on Mars. We're interested in fossils of ancient rabbits on Mars 20,000 years ago, and we're looking for the bones. I mean, that's really what NASA is doing now. So everything, it's like the deep state has a program to reveal a little bit at a time.
They have an agenda.
They have an agenda to delay.
Good. A word by Turan through Elena on Europa. The fleet, on Ganymede. Okay, on Europa, I think GP says, on Ganymede, on Europa, there are large whales in the oceans. You remember that?
Yes. He described seeing very large whales in Europa, in the oceans of Europa, that there was vast ocean there, and that he saw these very large marine animals like whales. And on Ganymede, there's also extensive water, but what he described there was that there were like vast structures from ancient civilizations on Ganymede, that Ganymede, Europa, and many other planets and moons in our solar system, many thousands of years ago, these had lots of populations and colonies from Atlantis, from Mars. Now there are
previous civilization.
Correct. There are still bases there, pockets of civilization, but in the past these were flourishing.
Okay. We heard from I think Raygood and Emery Smith, and even in Antarctica, the huge caves, the huge facility were used by previous civilizations for millions of years before.
That's correct. Yes, I've got that same information from many witnesses, contactees, researchers, that there are bases used by extraterrestrials many thousands of years ago, and from inner Earth civilizations many thousands of years ago, that these bases are discovered and they are repurposed for the secret space programs or deep underground military bases. We know, for example, from 1995, there was a civil engineer, his name was Phil Schneider, and he described how in 1979 that they were digging deep into this military deep underground base in the Archuleta Mesa of Dulce,
yes, and New Mexico.
Yeah. Correct, that they were wanting to expand the base and they were digging deeper, and they accidentally found a deeper base that was populated and controlled by grey extraterrestrials, and that there was a firefight between them, because this is the way they are discovering underground bases all over the Earth. Some are old and vacated, they're empty and they're repurposed. Some are still being used, and so when that happens, there can be fights and struggle and conflict.
It is as fascinating as well to imagine facilities completely empty today when they were used maybe 500,000 years ago by the Cedars, by old galactic civilization.
That's correct, yes. And of course they have a lot of ancient technologies left in these caverns, because this is the question that the secret space programs often have when they find the caverns, is like, well, where did the civilization go? Kind of like the Maya. Where did the Maya go? People often ask. And this is where we need to look at the possibility that when a civilization reaches a certain level of spiritual and technological development, they may collectively move to another density or to another dimension, or maybe go off planet. These are all possibilities we need to look at. But they leave behind technologies that can't take with them, that they leave them behind because they're going into a higher density. And a lot of these technologies often use stones, like rocks, big stones. And the secret space programs don't know how to use these technologies. And because what they've found is that these kind of ancient stone-based technologies require some kind of interface between human consciousness and genetics with the stones, that only people who have the right genetics can activate these technologies. Otherwise, to others, it looks like just, there's a stone wall and that's it. But this is actually technology. So they are recruiting people to come into the programs so that they go into these underground bases to activate the technologies, to see how the technologies work. This is how JP has been used on a number of missions to interact with the technology, because sometimes these technologies can be very dangerous for people who do not have the right genetics and the right consciousness. You can be severely injured.
Ahmed will ask you a question just before.
No, he's already given me the answer.
Okay.
Yes, it was JP.
In a moment, I will ask you a few questions about Radio Cinema and Cesar Brad, because this refers directly to what you were saying, people having a right DNA to activate a facility. What happened in Buseggi, in the facility in Romania, what it is in Radio Cinema's books. It is written on my paper to ask you a few questions about it. Okay, anyway, thank you, Dr. Salla, again. Great. And about the 2021 Earth Alliance mission to Ganymede to greet ET visitors, so the arrival of the fleet from the Intergalactic Federation, October 2021.
Yes, that's a very important mission that JP performed. He was advised first by Nordic extraterrestrials that he has been in contact with since 2008. He was advised first to get ready that he would be going on a mission to meet some very important extraterrestrials. And what he learned from the military was that the extraterrestrials who were arriving were different to the ones that have been here for a long time, that this was a much more highly evolved group of extraterrestrials. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so there was a very important convoy of space vehicles from the different nations on Earth, the different major nations. We're talking the United States, Russia, China, France, Britain, that these nations all collaborated in sending craft to meet with these visitors.
The Earth Alliance.
This would be the foundation of the Earth Alliance.
Solar Warden is involved?
Definitely. Solar Warden has been the key in establishing this Earth Alliance. And so they went to meet with these visitors. It was run by the US Space Command that was set up again in 2019. And so JP was part of that mission in 2021, and he describes how they went there to meet the visitors. He described spending time on Ganymede, interacting with some of the visitors that were there, and going to the different facilities, ancient facilities on Ganymede. And that was very significant because around the same time, Elena Danaan was getting information from her sources in the Galactic Federation that there would be the arrival of the Seeders, that this was 24 extraterrestrial civilizations that come from other galaxies that were responsible for seeding humanity in this galaxy, that the 24 civilizations collaborate with other civilizations in this galaxy.
The Intergalactic Federation.
You have the Intergalactic Federation of 24 civilizations who work with a group called the Nine, who are kind of like a very highly evolved beings of consciousness. We're talking maybe 7th, 8th density consciousness, very highly evolved. That the Seeders are like maybe 5th, 6th, 7th density beings. They come from other galaxies. And then you have beings from our galaxy, whether we're talking from the Pleiades, whether we're talking from Sirius, Tau Ceti, or Lyra.
Lyrans.
Exactly. Yeah. That these are more 4th, 5th density beings. And so there's a hierarchy in terms of extraterrestrials. And so our planet was seeded by these higher level civilizations, the 24 civilizations, who worked with some of the civilizations in our galaxy. So the Pleiadians, the Andromedans, the Lyrans, they would work with one of these groups of 24. So there's kind of like a hierarchy in place. And so Elena Danaan was told that there would be this arrival of the Seeders, and that this was going to be happening at the end of 2021. And this matched what JP had revealed about his mission to Ganymede.
Yeah. Okay. What about Alex Collier, who was a witness, who was a source again about it?
Yes, Alex Collier was also told about the arrival of very highly evolved extraterrestrials. He works with the Andromeda Council, which is one of these extraterrestrial organizations. They are very advanced, highly advanced technologically and scientifically, especially, and also consciousness. And so they are not a war-like, or they do not have fleets equipped for war. They are more scientists. The war fleets belong to the Galactic Federation. So the Andromeda Council are more scientists, and they are specialists in temporal travel. So they can look at future possibilities, future events. So they understood that 350 years in the future, that there would be a galactic tyranny in our galaxy. And when the Andromedans studied where did this galactic tyranny derive, they found it came back to the Earth, the Mars, and the Moon. And so
a galactic turning, what does it mean?
Tyranny.
Dictatorship.
Okay.
Yeah, kind of like the dark forces would control the galaxy. And so he relayed that information to all of the galactic civilizations in our galaxy, and they came up with a plan to intervene on Earth to stop this galactic tyranny from happening. So Alex Collier has described what is happening today, that this is really part of a plan by Galactics to thwart or prevent this galactic tyranny from happening. And the Galactics contacted all the major civilizations, highly evolved, in our galaxy to get them to start programs to stop this from happening. And so in the case of Elena Danaan, she describes how Thorhan Eredian and others came from the future. As Alex Collier was told by the Andromedans, that they in the future discovered this theory. So there were many galactics that would come from the future to the present. So the Galactic Federation today is not just like Pleiadians from today. These are Pleiadians from the future.
So the change of timeline.
To prevent a disruption to the timeline. Because the timeline, the original timeline, was one that the Andromedans observed, that our galaxy would progress in a positive way. But what they saw was that there was a deviation in the timeline, that someone had changed the timeline, and that they recognized that the people trying to change the timeline were the Alpha Draconians and the Orions, the bad guys, that they had tried to change the timeline, and that the Earth and Mars and the Moon was where they were trying to do this. So this is when the Andromedans warned everyone else and said, look, be careful. The Draconians are changing the timeline. If you do nothing, in 350 years, you will be unable to change things. So now is the time to act. So the Galactics from 100 years, 200 years in the future came now to make sure that the timeline would not be disrupted.
Okay, I had not understood that fully. Thank you. That's out of the Alex Collier books, Defending Sacred Ground.
He, in Defending Sacred Ground, he presented a lot of data, a lot of information about the Galactics and about this future tyranny. He was the first to talk about that in Defending Sacred Ground, that the Andromedans saw what was happening.
Okay.
So in the 1990s, book, so he was the first to reveal this to the world, and so he has been talking about this for many decades, and now you have new sources like Elena Danaan, like JP, and others talking about the intervention by these highly evolved extraterrestrials to prevent this disruption to the timeline to create a tyranny.
Thank you. I had not understood all of that. Do you think Alex Collier may come to an event in France sometime with Chris and Elena and you?
That would be wonderful if Alex joined us. I mean, his official position now is that he has retired from doing conferences, but he remains open to doing events. But still, I mean, officially he has retired. We will see whether or not he would be open to that. I think
very important to hear him live.
Exactly. Yes, he is like a galactic historian. That the Andromedans, they are scientists. Kind of like Jedi Knights, if you like, like Jedi Knights from Star Wars.
Okay.
Yeah, that they understand the galactic history. They understand the forces that govern our galaxy, but they are much more spiritual. They're not such a warlike race, and so they can intervene in a limited way, but more to raise consciousness and to prepare people for tyranny. They're not like the Galactic Federation that will intervene militarily to overcome the dark
They play
forces.
an important role in warning other civilizations.
Absolutely. This is the role that they've been playing, and Alex Collier, he has been their spokesperson for over 30 years now.
Impressive. Okay. I want to ask you a few words, because you have a little time, about the recent update regarding Maria Orsic through GP, I think, or Maria Orsic, I think it's GP revealed that, or Toran, it's Toran who explained that Maria Orsic actually was a famous Jessica with William Tompkins. But before that, because I think we'll finish with that if we have
the first
little
to
time.
say that was William Tompkins himself. The first to have said that is William Tompkins himself.
Yeah, he suggested it because he saw the picture. He saw Maria Orcic's picture. He said, "But that's Jessica." But now we have a confirmation, apparently, by Torhan. So I'll ask you a few words if you want to say a word about it. But to finish with the Council of Nine, you said that the first reference to the Council of Nine is higher beings, super conscious being. The first mention was around 1952 with psychiatrist Andrea Puharich, who had several psychics channel the Council of Nine, including Uri Geller and later Phyllis Schlemmer.
Yes, what happened was that this famous scientist, Dr. Andrea Puharich, in the early 1950s, he was very interested in psychic phenomena and developing scientific instruments that could help improve those that had the kind of psychic abilities, so that he could develop technologies so that those abilities could be raised to their highest potential. And he, in organizing scientific investigation of this, came across a psychic, or who was also a scientist, but from India, a Professor Vinod. And Professor Vinod, at one point, spontaneously began to channel this group called the Nine. And from that moment on, Andrea Puharich was very, very interested in the information from the Nine that seemed to have incredible cosmic information, not just about our galaxy, but of all the galaxies. So he began a long quest to reconnect with the Nine, because Professor Vinod helped him for, I believe it was about a year, but then he returned to India, and then he found other psychics, but the other psychics who began to communicate with the Nine, they could not hold the energy. That this energy was so subtle and so refined and so difficult that these psychics would often have problems, emotional problems, and would break down. Uri Geller also channeled the Nine for a short period with Andrea Puharich, and then it was only when Phyllis Schlemmer came on the scene in early, I think it was 1971, 72, she met Puharich, she began to channel the Nine. And because she was much more mature and emotionally stable, she was able to do this for many years. And she wrote
the
a
60s,
book.
60s or 70s?
Phyllis Schlemmer, she emerged in around 1971, 72.
72.
Around that period, early 1970s. So she began to channel the Nine, and her information told us a lot about the Nine and how they interact with the 24 civilizations that are responsible for genetic experiments in our galaxy. So the 24 civilizations are the same 24 civilizations that Elena Danan has described as the Cedars. So Phyllis Schlemmer was talking about them in the 1970s. So you can read that in her books, The Only Planet of Choice.
The Only Planet of Choice by Phyllis Schlemmer.
Phyllis Schlemmer.
Only Planet of Choice. Is she alive?
No, she has passed away.
Okay, thank you, Doctor. 1952. We are in 1952. Andrea Puharich. 1952 is the time of George Adamski as well.
Well, that's a very interesting question. George Adamski, who was he having contact with?
Yeah.
I mean, people who have read George Adamski books, what they hear is that he had contact with Venusians, beings that identified themselves as coming from Venus, that they were very spiritual, they were interested in governments following a more spiritual path rather than a technological path, and he identified the craft as these flying saucer craft with a distinct shape, and also having very long cigar-shaped motherships that that these flying saucers came from. Now, what we know is that these are similar technologies to what the Nazis were developing. That the Nazis developed flying saucer technologies, or the Hannibal technologies, and also they were developing cigar-shaped motherships as well. In the 1940s. They developed these technologies, and so there has been a debate whether or not the flying saucers and the cigar-shaped ships that George Adamski were describing were really from a group of extraterrestrials from Venus, or whether they are part of a German secret space program that operated out of Antarctica. Now, and there are people that say one or the other. Now, I think there's a third possibility here that needs to be considered, and I first heard this from Colonel Wendell Stevens, the famous researcher, Air Force pilot,
who co-authored a book on the Aztec crash of 1948.
He wrote a series of books, or edited a series of books of contact with the Pleiades, contact with Umo, contact with many different civilizations. And what he said was that, in his opinion, that the beings that Maria Orsic, that the beings that Adamski made contact with were Germans who traveled to the stars, and they came back. But they were transformed. They were no longer imperialist, German nationalists. They had become spiritualized because they went out for 80 years and they interacted with the Galactiques, seeking true knowledge. Because the Germans, even the German secret space programs, you had the same, the black hats and the white hats. This is always the same. Any civilization, you're always going to have positive and negative. But the Germans, the German nationalists, so you had some that were interested in spirituality, and those went out and they become very spiritual, and Maria Orsic was associated with that group. And this brings me back to the question of Jessica. You mentioned Jessica earlier, that William Tompkins said that when he saw Maria Orsic in my book, the US Navy Secret Space Program, he said, "Holy cow, that's Jessica." So he identified that the Jessica, who was a Nordic extraterrestrial who was helping him develop designs for a Navy secret space program, was none other than Maria Orsic. And that Maria Orsic, we know, has been working with the Galactic Federation and with the Earth Alliance and the Solar Warden Space Program.
How do we know that now?
We know that from William Tompkins, we know that from Elena Denan, we know that from David Rousseau, Jean-Charles Moyen. So there are multiple sources that have described seeing Maria Orsic working alongside military personnel and scientists from the Solar Warden Space Program. And so, to my mind, this means that Maria Orsic, she was actually a extraterrestrial who had infiltrated the Earth to try to help humanity evolve both technologically and spiritually, but that the group of extraterrestrials she was working with initially from Aldebaran, that they were not really very positive, that they had aligned themselves with the kind of the Draconian Orion alliance. And so when she discovered this, she began to work after the Second World War with the Solar Warden program. And I think that makes a lot of sense to me, that would have been the progression. And there has been remote viewers, Dick Allgaier from the Future Forecasting Group.
Farsight
Institute. Well, different organisation. So his organisation, Future Forecasting, previously they were known as Crypto Viewing. Now they have future forecasting. That's their website, futureforecasting.com, I believe, or .org. You go there, and he describes the end of Maria Orsic, and what he describes was that Maria Orsic was trying to escape Berlin at the end of the Second World War, and that she was captured by the Russians, and then they did things to her and then executed her. And he was saying she was a very highly evolved being and all of that. Now, Elena Danan has described that this was actually a cover memory, that this was not the true Maria, or either it was a clone or it was a cover memory, that in fact Maria Orsic was taken from Germany prior to the end of the Second World War because she was valuable. She was a star seed.
Was she taken by the Nordics?
By the Nordics, yes. But in order to protect her, because she was going to be used for future operations, they either sent a clone or they created a cover memory, or they made it seem as though she had been captured by the Russians and murdered. So that way the Dark Fleet and the Draconians wouldn't know that she was now an operative working with the Solar Warden, because it's like spies, double agents. They work with one group and then they work with the other group. And if the group that the group that she originally worked with, the German Dark Fleet, realizes that she's now working with the other group, they will send assassins. But if they think she died, then they wouldn't send assassins. So, and this makes sense to me.
About William Tompkins and Jessica, a word about William Hopkins is important for disclosure for all our history.
William Tompkins is very important for the secret space program information, because he is someone that has hundreds of documents substantiating his work, first with the US Navy during the Second World War, where he was part of a covert program to conduct espionage on Nazi Germany, especially in its aerospace programs, to find out what the Germans were building.
How many spies were there among the SS and Nazis?
He identified 29 Navy spies, highly trained spies that were embedded in all of Germany's young men that were embedded
with
in
German origin.
Correct. Yes, that in the United States there are many former German immigrants there, and these are people that have strong German connections, families and so forth. So these young men had German ancestry, so they would fit into Nazi Germany without being observed, that they could just go work with a top corporation, get a job, and the jobs were strategic. Like they would get a job as like a janitor. And a janitor it's a low-level job, but actually it's a job that gives you access to many things.
Janitor, what is it?
Like a cleaner.
Oh, clean.
Like you clean.
Okay.
It's very clever, because it means that you can go in and you clean everything, and you see what's happening in, and you take out all the rubbish, but you see everything that is happening. So he said that there were 29 of these spies embedded in Nazi Germany, and he said that every 6 months they would be taken out of Nazi Germany, and they would be taken to Naval Air Station San Diego, and they would give debriefings to a admiral in the United States Navy called Admiral Rico Botta, and they would give debriefings, and that the admiral would then tell William Tompkins to develop a briefing packet. So William Tompkins would develop a briefing packet, and he would take those briefing packets to major universities, think tanks, corporations, military institutions, and say, this is what we believe the Germans are doing. And of course, people in those corporations and the military would say, oh, bullshit, that's not happening, that's not possible. But what he found was that some scientists were open. But even then, many closed-minded scientists, that's not possible, that violates the laws of physics and so forth. So he reported that there was a lot of resistance. But he had documents proving that he was carrying briefing packets on the plane of the admiral. So this substantiates him, and also that he worked with the Douglas Aircraft Company in developing designs of future flying or future space carriers for the United States Navy. That he was working directly under Dr. Wolfgang Klemperer, who was the designer of the dirigible spacecraft, or the flying dirigible aircraft carriers that had been developed by the US Navy in the 1930s. The USS Macon and there was a second one whose name escapes me, but there were two dirigible flying aircraft carriers that the United States had in the 1930s. So people don't remember this. They don't realize that in the 1930s, the United States Navy had two prototype flying aircraft carriers.
Which technology?
They used dirigible Zeppelin type craft. They were hard shelled, not balloons. They were hard shelled, and they used helium, and that they had devices, grappling devices, so an aircraft would come underneath. They called them the the Arrow airplanes at the time. They were just propeller driven aircraft, and there would be a grappling hook that would grab the aircraft and bring it up into the dirigible. So this was the first prototype flying aircraft carrier. People don't know this today. The man who designed those craft was William Tompkins' boss at Douglas Aircraft Company.
Klemperer.
Dr. Wolfgang Klemperer was Tompkins' boss. So this is documented. So William Tompkins is very important because he was working directly under the man who designed the first flying aircraft carriers for the United States Navy, and in the 1950s, the U.S. Navy was now interested in building space carriers. That the Navy understood in the 1950s that these technologies that the Germans had developed had applications for advanced space carriers. And so that's what they were interested in. How do you build a space carrier? And so Tompkins was giving that information to the Navy, and he was helped by Jessica, who was Maria Osich in disguise, who was actually an asset for the Galactic Federation of the World. But Tompkins identified 3 Nordics that had infiltrated Douglas Aircraft Company. And he said that Jessica was one, but there were 2 others. One was a man. And that he said that they had also infiltrated other companies like North American and also TRW, that they had infiltrated because the Galactic Federation wanted this technology to be developed, because William Tompkins said that what the Galactic Federation wanted was that in the future humanity would develop their own space fleets, space carriers, space fighter planes, and squadrons of highly trained pilots, because they wanted humanity to join the Galactic Federation in a kind of wider conflict with the Draconian and the Orion extraterrestrials.
Yeah, so thank you. Important.
Thank you so much for all these details. It's very important and perceived and also useful to have a kind of global view, global scope on everything. And that's why I also want to ask, what about Space Force or the Space Army that Trump create, the new Space Corp, not Corp, but Army Corp, I mean, not corporation, of course. What do you know about this? And so the connection with Solar Warden or other forces, or do they continue to be parallel, or do they interweave together?
Yeah, good question. Space Force was originally envisaged in the year 2000. There was a paper on a space on the future of space and the military that was released in the year 2001, and this recommended the creation of a Space Corps. And so there was an attempt under the Bush administration, the first Bush administration. He came to power in 2001. Donald Rumsfeld was his Secretary of Defense. He was wanting to implement the recommendation for the creation of a Space Corps. But what happened was that the deep state didn't want this, because they wanted to slow humanity down. They didn't want humanity to become a spacefaring civilization. They wanted to slow humanity down, so they opposed this. And so what happened was, as Donald Rumsfeld was trying to push this initiative forward for Space Corps, and he was wanting to say, well, this is where we need to go. We need to put resources and money into developing a spaceport, because in the future, America's biggest threat would be a space Pearl Harbor. And a space Pearl Harbor would be where this satellite grid that is vital for telecommunications, for precision-guided smart weapons, that was very vulnerable. And so you needed to protect that. And to protect that, you needed to have a dedicated Space Corps to do that and to do other things in space. So the deep state didn't want this. So they contrived 9/11 to now shift the American military to not come up with strategies to defend against future space attacks or a space Pearl Harbor, but to actually run after terrorists in the hills of Afghanistan. So they were successful in steering the US military for the next nearly 20 years from thinking about space and the future of space in terms of critical infrastructure in space being attacked by China, Russia, or someone else, to now looking for terrorists in hills of Afghanistan. Very successful so you thwarted all of the energies of the military for nearly 20 years into doing that. When Donald Trump came to power, he was asked to come to power because the White Hats wanted to stop this. They wanted to get America on the right track again, saying, no, the future is not about hunting terrorists in hills of Afghanistan or Somalia or Iraq or whatever. The future is to build a powerful presence in space with a dedicated military on space. So this is what Donald Trump tried to do. There were people within the US Air Force that wanted to stop this. They were acting on behalf of the deep state. And in fact, the Secretary of the US Air Force banned senior Air Force generals from talking about the need for a dedicated space force or a dedicated space service. They didn't want this. So Donald Trump had to have this Secretary of the Air Force sacked, and a new one came in, and then he passed, and he made statements saying that we need to have a space force. He didn't talk about a space corps. He said we need a space force. So people thought, oh, this is new. This is Donald Trump in 2017 talking about we need to have a space force. But in fact, it was a kind of like a readoption. Going back to 2000, they were talking about a space corps. Now it's a space force. Same thing, same idea. And so Donald Trump was instrumental because he was acting on behalf of the White Hats to move the disclosure process forward. And the disclosure process moving forward required a dedicated space military. And so that's why Space Force was created, and why Space Force is now developing more and more resources. At the moment, they're kind of like, publicly, they are developing new satellite technologies, working with SpaceX, but using kind of old rocket-propelled technologies. But there are people in Space Force that know about these technologies, but the advanced technologies, but they understand it has to be released organically, working with SpaceX and other private corporations. But in answer to your question about the parallel, the movement between Space Force and Solar Warden. Solar Warden is run by the Navy. Space Force is run by the US Air Force. And at the moment they are running in parallel. Solar Warden is multinational, working with the United States Navy, is working with other countries, France, Australia, Britain, Canada, and so forth, in developing a multinational space program. And this is, they are developing this further, expanding it, having more and more countries join through the Artemis Accords, join through the Combined Space Operations Initiative, and also this Operation Olympic is the new military initiative. So at the moment they're running parallel. Space Force and Solar Warden are running in parallel, but the plan is that eventually they will combine. And this in a few years' time, you won't have a military Space Force will not be under the control of the US Air Force. It will be it will be its own department where Space Force will combine with Solar Warden, and it will be completely funded, but it will be a multinational initiative. So this is where we get space, maybe Starfleet, and because I think they're thinking big. They're not thinking, we're going to make Space Force, turn it into Solar Warden, and make it run under the Americans. I think they're thinking big, more like a space NATO. There will be a combined operations. The Americans, of course, will be like the alpha dog, right? They'll be the one that will be leading, but everyone else will be sharing the technology. Everyone will be happy, except for China. They will be very unhappy. I think Russia will eventually join because they understand that in the end, Russia and America will be friends again. That this is only temporary, what we are seeing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that
I got a question.
You're welcome.
overview.
You're welcome.
Raised a lot of concern because we are in a global conflict. We are in a global conflict on the world today. USA, Ukraine, Russia, China. A conflict may come in the south of sea, Chinese south of sea with Taiwan. We know all this danger, so it's difficult to understand really what may happen regarding all these issues, Solar Warden, Space Fleet, knowing that there are so much conflict, but we don't have all the answers today. So thank you sincerely for your contributions. But now, last question before give the word to my friend about an important issue. Tony Rodriguez, the Dark Fleet. We had Antarctica. We had the Operation High Jump. We know that the Admiral Byrd was defeated in 1952. I want to ask you about the Dark Fleet today. Ceres, Tony Rodriguez, his account on the Dark Fleet, abduction of children, and the recent events saying that the Dark Fleet has been expelled from Ceres and from Mars. What happened in the solar system presently? What about these evil powers, these bad Nazi Germans, and these Nazi colonies, Antarctica, Mars, Moon, solar system? In which situation are we, and what is Dark Fleet?
Okay, this is a very...
it's a sad topic, but we have to...
It's a big topic. It really requires a lot of time.
A few words.
But just a few words. The Dark Fleet was created in Antarctica, and it was something that was originally created in collaboration between nationalists from Nazi Germany, working with negative extraterrestrials, the draconians in particular, and so they built up a space program in Antarctica, and over the subsequent decades they reached agreements with the United States to collaborate, share technologies. And so over the years the Dark Fleet became bigger and bigger, more powerful. They were launching deep space operations outside of our solar system, creating colonies in other solar systems.
Well, how many decades ago?
This began in the 1940s and 1950s. They began doing this, and they were building more and more fleets, having U.S. personnel join them after agreements were reached in the 1950s with the United States and the Europeans. That the agreements were reached as well, the Bilderberg Group and so forth. This was instrumental in the Dark Fleet getting a lot of resources.
Which stars in particular?
Well, there are star systems in the Aldebaran system that they established the presence, but many other star systems that they established bases. They established a very bad reputation because extraterrestrials living on peaceful worlds would be attacked by the Dark Fleet. And from their perspective, they're being attacked by humans from Earth. That the Earth humans are evil beings, because the Dark Fleet were capturing, enslaving, conquering, taking away the resources, but they would use trickery. There was a insider, Jason Rice, who explained the way the Dark Fleet operated. He explained how they would first appear like friends to a world. They would show up and say, oh, we want to help you evolve, we want to share technology with you, and so they would befriend them, they would trick them, and then the Dark Fleet, the Draconians would arrange for an invasion from some force. And so this world would think, well, we're being invaded. And the Dark Fleet would say, oh, we're your friends, we will protect you. And so it was a setup. It was a setup. So they would destroy the invading extraterrestrials, who would be like monsters, monstrous dogs or insects or something. They would destroy them. And then this world would now, oh, thank you, you saved us. And they would give all their power away to the Dark Fleet. And this is how they established control. And so worlds learned about this, and they realized that the Dark Fleet were evil. They were working with the Draconians. So now, in our solar system, the Dark Fleet have been defeated. They've been removed from power. Antarctica is under the control of this Earth Alliance that the White Hats are working through, and that the Dark Fleet has lost all power in our solar system. But they lost control of the moon. But outside of our solar system, they still have fleets, they still have colonies, they still have a presence, and they have established a very, very bad reputation for humanity. So now we are in a very difficult position, humanity on Earth, because now we are waking up. We're waking up to the truth. And we think, oh, wow, the deep state tricked us, that all this technology was developed secretly and used, and the Dark Fleet did all these things out there. But now we are humanity, we are the Earth Alliance, and now we are going to go to the stars, be part of the Star Trek future. And we're going to go to these worlds, Aldebaran and these other star systems. Hey, look, we are humans. We are here. We are brand new. And they say, no, you're not. You are evil monsters. You attacked us, and you did this, and you did that. This is our legacy. This is a terrible legacy, a burden we have to carry for many, many years, many, many decades. We are going to meet extraterrestrials out there who will look at us like monsters. And so we will have a lot of work. And that means we have a moral obligation also, not only to reveal all of the injustices that happened in our world, we will have to deal with the injustices that the Dark Fleet have done in other worlds. We have to go to every one of these worlds where the Dark Fleet operated, and we have to say, we are responsible. We cannot say we are not responsible. We are responsible for everything the Dark Fleet did to you. We are very, very sorry. We want to heal you. We want to help you however we can. And we will do our best to make those that did these terrible things to you accountable as much as we can. This is our responsibility. So for decades to come, we will have a big responsibility to clean this up. But of course, we have the Galactic Federation that will help us. They will explain to the others, no. Most of humanity, 95% of humanity did not know what was happening. Now they are sorry, they want to make amends, they want to reconcile, and they are allies. So this will be the process. So we will have a lot of friends, but we will have difficulty too.
It's very impressive, Dr. Salla, because we think of Earth, we think of the alien culture, the bad greys, bad reptilians, and the good Nordics coming to Earth, coming to Mars. But what you are saying to us is that we have a galactic responsibility because humans, Nazi human, bad German Nazi, have done evil in other solar systems, on other planets. So our moral commitment is not only take care of Earth now, but take care about the evil things that have been done in other solar systems by humans, by earthly humans.
I think it's already running late.
Okay, thank you very much. We wish you a very nice time in Denver with this event. A word and
it's already too late. So, Dr. Salas, thank you very much. It was a fascinating piece of information that I had. How you have a reputation of being a very, very serious researcher. How do you get to trust people like Tony Rodriguez? Do you have a battery test for them? How do you get to trust these people?
Yes, I have a vetting process. I normally vet people for a long time. You know, JP, I knew from 2008. I didn't say anything about him until 2000. So I vetted him for like 9 years.
Wow.
Tony Rodriguez, I vetted for over a year.
Sasha Mountain, it was the interviews he had on YouTube. That's how I discovered him. It's through you.
Right, yes, through the interviews. So, yeah, I vet people. I always rely on other researchers, and I have sources that can give me information about, is this person genuine? Do they have evidence? Do they have any corroborating data? And so I don't just say to a person, it's very rare that a person comes to me and gives me a fantastic story and I say, oh, let's talk about it and announce it. I have to vet them first. Make sure that this is genuine. This is not like a psychological operation, because this is real. This is happening, psychological operation.
Was the episode of the salt in Ceres a kind of probing on Tony? You told him, would you like to retract because you said it was salt, and then NASA said it was not salt? Or?
Yes, this was a very important part of my vetting of Tony is to, like, he talked about this geyser on Ceres and what it was. So, and I looked at the NASA data and like we talked about that. But it took me a little while to vet Tony. But then I felt confident in his story, and so that's when I went public on that.
Is Ceres a free town, a free environment now? Ceres?
I believe Ceres is one of those planetoids that has been taken away from the deep state, from the Dark Fleet, and is being put into the hands of the control of the Earth Alliance.
Great.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Salla, and we wish you a good stay here in France. I hope you will come back, and a beautiful event in Denver.
Perfect, I have one last request from the translator, Michelle. She wants a picture of you.
Sure. And